You are about to witness a global movement. The medical system has failed us. Pharmaceuticals are designed to make us sick, weak, dependent. Not anymore. This is the Medicine Girl podcast with renowned healing expert and registered nurse Robin Stebbins. Every week, we shine the light on new ways to heal your body from the root, ignite your inner healer, and tap into your divine wisdom. Begin to live harmoniously with your mind, body, and spirit. You are stronger than you think, braver than you realize. Now is the time to wake up and start living healthier, wealthier, and laugh out loud happier. And here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, Robin Stebbins, and today I am so excited to introduce Koelle Simpson with the Koelle Institute. And Koelle, I am going to just let you introduce yourself and kind of explain the Equus Coaching and the Koelle Institute and all of that, all of your amazing accolades. And then we'll get into more of how we use kind of nature as our wisdom and healing and self-care practice. So take it away, Koelle.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come and share and talk and connect with you as well. I really appreciate that. It's such a big umbrella. It's kind of hard to know where to start, but essentially, the Equus coaching work was something that was born out of, I started with horses when I was around 9 years old, and I struggled a great deal, unfortunately, like so many of us have, with a lot of childhood trauma, and horses were just this incredible bridge for me to hold on to some thread of hope about another way of being on the planet, about another way of engaging with each other. And, I think I was probably around, maybe 10 or 11 years old when I watched, the first time I watched a horse really being handled in a way that was pretty abusive. It was pretty aggressive, and it was just really, really unkind. And of course, in the person who was like bullying this horse didn't know any better. They were doing what they had been taught, and just one thing gets passed down from one generation to the next about this is how you're supposed to think about what an animal is, or what a horse's job is, and what they should or shouldn't do. So. Yeah. But when I watched what happened, the thing that I became so incredibly mesmerized by was seeing the way that after this very sort of traumatic event that this horse went through, when it went back to the herd out in the pasture with other horses and like reconnected with other horses, it was, I'm not saying completely fine, but this animal was able to completely re-engage in assessing its environment, connecting with other horses. Its body went back to being in a state of peace, in a state of relaxation. And it was so significant to me as a young girl going through so much trauma myself and feeling such an incredible whirlwind of shame about, not being able to deal with it differently or know what to do or know how to make any of it stop. And so when I watched this horse's response, I was like, wow, that's kind of amazing. That they are able to still engage with each other. They're able to still trust one another. They're able to still, have this profound level of connection that I feel like I'm losing in a hurry. Right. So that, from the time I was quite young, that set me on a course of being deeply curious about the roadmap that Mother Nature is holding for how we are integrate experiences of trauma, and how we, how we're able to actually support and continue to cultivate the innate resilience that lives in all of us. So, long story short, it became work that I began to share and teach all over the world. And in 2010, there was a lot of requests and demand for teaching other people how to facilitate this work. And so I founded and started up the Equus Coaching Institute. And we've been teaching others how to facilitate some really beautiful experiences for their clients. And now, the focus has just been on really returning to supporting clients that are struggling with trauma and struggling with understanding like the larger ripple effects that trauma is having on our entire culture.
Yes. Yeah. And I recently had Travis on, who is an Equus coach too. And we're really talking about, and one of the big questions I wanted to ask you was, when we experience a significant trauma when we're young, it's really hard to navigate. We don't have the roadmap. And I really like what you're saying. Look to Mother Nature for the roadmap. We can't think our way through it. We can't get all these systems in place with the thinking mind. I think it's got to be through nature. And that's the powerful work with horses. They don't have the ability to have a facade. You can't lie to them. You can't cheat on them. You can't create your world for them to follow. You're in their world. This is their barrio, Holmes. This is where you can see yourself mirrored back authentically. And so that's my question. Why or how or what are we doing when we're trying to heal this trauma?
Yeah. So, I love to always continue to sit with this question because I think there's so much about it we're still coming to understand. But what I've come to see in sort of having that question be the center of my sense of purpose in life is that when it comes to trauma, when you look at the way that human beings sort of are affected by trauma, and you look at the way the rest of the animal kingdom is affected by experiences of trauma, first of all, you realize trauma is a part of life. Now, it's not about trying to create a life experience where nothing ever goes wrong. We're always going to have moments of light, and we're always going to have moments of dark. We're always going to have challenges and heartbreak, and we're always going to have opportunities for amazing love and abundance and connection and mystery. So I don't, I'm not of the frame of mind that we should try to bubble wrap our lives so that nothing terrible ever happens. And, now here we are in the middle of a global pandemic. It's pretty obvious that that's kind of impossible. We have to be able to navigate these experiences, right? So, when you look at the rest of the animal world, what I've come to see is how there is a safe container for them to return to. And that safe container is a deep sense of belonging and safe relationships. So one of the things that I think can be misunderstood when you sort of look into trying to, explore self-help for yourself or, try to work through your different emotional or psychological challenges that you might be facing. There's a misconception that somehow if you just love yourself enough, and you do enough good things for yourself, that you'll somehow arrive at this place where everything is okay. And the truth is, we deeply need one another. We need community. We need safe relationships. We absolutely cannot survive without love and connection, and we cannot survive without a deep sense of belonging. Well, that's a major problem because we've built an entire culture over the last, I'm not even sure how many decades, but we have become a culture that is been focused on perfectionism and has also been built on a model of scarcity. So,
Yeah.
I have to get as many things as I can possibly get and hide and harvest them over here for the moment when I don't have the resources that I need. And that means that I have to do something to be more important or more special in some way than you are in order to get more resources. Right?
Yes.
So that puts us in a very competitive, compare and despair kind of mentality with each other. And you for sure do not see that in the natural world. The rest of the animal kingdom, they're navigating through feast and famine and all of those different, cyclical processes that happen as a result of whatever's going on ecologically or whatever's happening with the weather. There's this beautiful ability to surrender to the relational nature of all things.
Yes.
So it's that part is one component of it. The piece of being a culture of perfectionism, we have so much narrative around who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to accomplish in this lifetime, what school you should have gone to, what age you should never age past.
Right. Yep.
There's just a lot of different.
It's just almost, it's almost like we need all these gods above us. The God of tell me what I should look like. The God of tell me what to wear. The God of tell me how smart I should be. What I should be taking, medications or prescriptions or just, procedures on my body. You tell me how to deal with my body and my spirit.
Yeah.
And it's fear-based.
Yeah. And so as a result of all of this, every human being on the planet at this time really kind of being impacted by this cultural narrative, there's a real underlying fear that somehow we're not enough. Somehow I'm not good enough to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to try to put on some kind of face or front or facade that will convince the other person that I'm good enough to belong for my survival. And that puts us in a dynamic where we never actually feel safe, even with each other. So
yes.
When we're trying to understand why we struggle to be able to handle moments of trauma and embrace our own resilience, the resilience comes from having a safe container to return to. So a place where your body is able to feel safe, where your mind is, where your psyche is able to feel like a sense of safety, belonging, acceptance. You're not questioning your sense of value or questioning if what you're doing is okay. There's a place for your whole nervous system to deeply, deeply relax. And in that physiological state, the natural intelligence of our body can do what it needs to do to restore ourselves and be ready to meet the next moment. But primarily, from my perspective, we're in a place and time that's rather exciting. We're in a place and time where we're having the opportunity to start to cultivate a very different culture for human beings. And that means becoming much more aware of what we need to cultivate environments of safety for one another.
I love that. And I think what I've noticed with this global pandemic, and it doesn't matter what your viewpoints on it are, it's a giant reset button for all of us. And I think for the first time, some people have really started to look inward and seen themselves and their family mirrored for the first time and connecting for the first time. I've seen more people out hiking than I ever have in my life. Usually I'm the only one out there. But I see people connecting with nature now. I call it getting skin in the game. Understanding like this planet is worth saving, and that's egoic. The planet's going to be fine whether we're here or not. It's saving it for ourselves and creating a balance with Mother Nature. And what you were talking about, I just saw a show about the wisdom of plants. And one of it was talking about the Douglas fir forests in British Columbia, how everything is collaborative. The fungi feed the trees, and the fungi get their nutrients from the trees. It's all symbiotic. And, when you look at the forest, sometimes it seems like chaos, but that's nature in balance. There's always something dying and something being born. And it's that constant state of the pendulums, kind of swinging back and forth. And then we get to more of, the human side, where we, in this culture, I don't believe we have that, what you're talking about, that time to create a sanctuary to reset our nervous system every day. For me, I have to go out and I go hiking for 2 hours. That's my non-negotiable. But when we're talking, what I see when I do with coaching clients or my patients, it's either we're on social media or devices or computers or TVs, or we're working, but we're not resetting. We don't have that time to balance. And even in sleep world, most of us aren't even sleeping. And if we can't sleep, then we take a medication, and it's just constant adrenal fatigue.
Absolutely. And I was on a hike just yesterday morning with a friend. We were here in Colorado, just doing a little trail through the mountains and sharing with each other. And she said, I'm worried that as we start to try to go back into establishing some kind of new normal, that, I was feeling such a sense of deep peace and relaxation, not over the fact that we were dealing with a pandemic or the financial stress, but over the fact that it felt like everybody was finally slowing down.
Yes.
And that felt like, while there were so many things that were scary, it also felt like a lot of relief. And we had this great conversation. I really acknowledged, having a similar awareness and appreciation for that need for us to slow down. And we got into a conversation. I said with her, I don't think it's a matter of people not wanting to lean into more connection or slower time or less time on the screens or less time working. I certainly don't have any answers for this, but I think it has more to do with people feeling their basic needs for survival. So that intense need to figure out, how am I going to take care of everything I need to take care of? How am I going to be able to afford, what I need to afford financially? And I think the way that our financial structure has been set up, there are some things about it that are certainly very positive, and there are some things about it that really keep us stuck. And it keeps us in a place where we're overriding the natural intelligence to be able to shift out of this survival mode and into a deep place of well-being. So it will be very interesting to see how each of us are able to meet this moment in time and, find these footholds of courage to explore putting value on different aspects of our lives and finding ways to come together in community to support each other in ways that we haven't before, so that we're not so intensely focused on those very basic survival needs, and we can come into a deeper state of well-being. Because in that state of well-being, we finally have access to an immense level of creativity. That's the thing that's so beautiful. When you look at nature, all of the animals in the rest of the animal kingdom are constantly living in a state of unknown. It's not like they have control over what's going to happen or where their next meal is going to come from, or, whether they might get, chowed on by a lion in the next hour. Like there's no ability to really sort of control any of those things, but there's such an incredible sense of aliveness. This ability to be fully engaged in the experience you're having, to be able to have deeply powerful, intimate relationships where you have this deep experience of connection. And yeah, to be able to meet those elements of unknown without, so much need to guard against and self-protect. And
Yes.
I think that just comes back to us looking at what do we actually need to create that kind of foundation where we can thrive in an environment of the unknown.
And I want to unpack a lot because you said a lot of just brilliant things, and you just have this way of just connecting the dots spiritually for me. But the whole idea with the animal kingdom of being in that constant state of unknown, I believe, is what fuels us as humans. We keep thinking we want heaven. We keep thinking we want, when I retire, then I'm going to be happy. When I XYZ, get rid of the trauma. When I heal myself, when I fix myself, etc., then I'll be happy. But when you really dig deep and you really get into that, if you knew the outcome of the game, would you ever want to play it? If you knew the Monopoly is going to go this way every single time, you would not play it. Or any game of chance, if you're going to win every single time, you're going to stop playing. This is what our life is. And then with this, what I also want to go back to is when we see in this time of a global reset and what is my normal, it gives you an opportunity to really dig deep and what am I doing all of this for? What do I want to heal myself for? What is my end result? And for me, it's been more, I was so attached to healing my broken self. Attach. Now I see I'm not broken, but I really want to know who I am authentically without the different noise of parental guidance and teacher guidance and whoever else I put on a pedestal. Who am I? What do I want? And, a lot of times, Koelle, it's not anything that costs money. 99.9% of the time, if I have my shelter, my basic Maslow's basic needs, I've got enough food, water, I've got a roof over my head. Everything else is kind of gravy.
Yeah.
And then when we center that into, if we all kind of tapped into what my heart's desires are, not necessarily my ego's desires to appear to be a positive or good person or a wealthy person or whatever facades we're trying to create, but I really tap into my heart's desires, then the peace comes no matter what's going on the outside.
Absolutely. So, to me, it kind of comes back to, again, what we've set up as our cultural foundation. When we can shift out of trying to be good enough, then we can just come into a deep place of acceptance for where we are and coming into right relationship with our own innate needs. So, similarly, when I'm working with clients in Equus coaching sessions or, and other retreats that we're doing, I can sometimes just really compassionately empathize with those individuals that go into a place of constantly wanting to find something wrong with themselves and fix it. There's something I'm just not getting, or I don't understand, or I need to know more of, or I'm not enlightened enough, or I'm not, whatever it might be. And so that feeling that there's somehow something wrong with you. To me, that's right at the base of that sort of incessant message that we often don't even know we've been receiving.
Yes.
About who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to look like, what you're supposed to accomplish in this lifetime. And all of that sets us up for staying in a place where we're constantly doing a lot of self-shredding, like putting yourself through the paper shredder. And it puts us in a place of constantly comparing, competing, and not feeling like enough. I honestly believe that that this experience on this planet is about about having intimate experiences. So everything, we're slowly beginning to kind of awaken to the awareness at large that everything has a relationship and everything has a relational nature to it. As we look, as you were saying, you were talking about the forest earlier, and the more that we start to understand the dynamics of plants and trees, and we're realizing that all of these things have a language, that they're communicating to each other, and that it's not survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
Sharing resources and working with one another and communicating with one another for the health of the forest. So,
yes. And that's what I think that point needs to be made really succinctly for people listening, because it wasn't until I got that deeply that I realized, like, Koelle, when you do better, I do better. When my coworker at work does better, I do better. It's a symbiotic relationship. So, and nature is abundant if you really look at and tap into what it is in truth. It's incredibly abundant. There's more than enough for everyone when we're not hoarding and creating that fear, and leading from fear, we're leading from the heart. So the idea then that this nature is survival of the fittest is not accurate at all. It's symbiotic, and everything has its place in the relationship to nature. Everything is a benefit. Everything benefits something. And so, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just really, that's such an important thing to get.
No, it's such an important and exciting shift in perspective for us to make. Is to realize the relational and cyclical nature of things. And when we allow these intelligent systems to flow, we engage in the harmony of how everything plays together. But right now, so many human beings are still coming from the perspective of, I have to do something or be something, or, to be good enough to belong. We're working through those foundational patterns of trauma. At the same time as we're waking up to those, starting to figure out, how do I cultivate relationships and community that actually supports my sense of well-being and supports, our sense of safety, and how do we connect together? Because our human relationships have been quite traumatic. For most people, the majority of their trauma hasn't come from some other, avenue. For most people, it's come from close relationships. And while, of course, no one's perfect and these things happen, we're dealing with many generations of a lot of complex trauma being passed down from one to the other. And it's become, from my perspective, it's reaching a very interesting kind of tipping point, where we're finally becoming so isolated and disconnected from each other. Not just the result of the need for social distancing in the midst of a pandemic. I mean,
correct.
That's certainly giving us even more of an awareness of how much we really need each other. But even prior to that, there's been an emotional and almost psychological distancing from one another. And it comes at a huge cost, but it's coming from a place of survival. If I don't quite understand how to be around you without having my whole world being dumped upside down and being, feeling unsafe or feeling manipulated or feeling controlled, then I can't really enjoy a close connection with you, so I'm just going to isolate to my little house or my little room where I feel like I'm okay with myself, with my dog or my cat, So we're in the middle of rebuilding. As we wake up to what some of these trauma patterns have been and what has been, really fueling them for quite some time. We're also in the midst of a time and space where we're learning how to engage in healthy intimacy. Not just sexual intimacy, but actual being able to be fully alive and fully present with one another and be able to express what my needs and boundaries might be, and also really hear what your needs and boundaries might be, and come together and how we actually connect. How do we collaborate? How do we engage with one another and both support those individual needs and boundaries at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the trick, because it's almost like we have these super complex energetic beings with no instruction manual. And so, when you're coming into something healthy, for me, it was always just dealing with one chaos after the next. That was my familiar. And then when the chaos goes away and the peace comes in, it's like, well, now what? I don't know. This is really awkward, forming deep, intimate relationships with people. And, that feeling of oversharing or not feeling safe to share, navigating that. I think it's more, I'm feeling that this idea of what you see is what you get, but very firm boundaries. And if I get a gut instinct someone's not safe, then that's just that.
Yes, I mean, it might seem a little bit like a contradiction, but we actually can learn to cultivate a relationship with ourselves where we're much more authentically in tune with what our needs might be, starting with what we need to feel safe in connection with another person. And while we start to really cultivate a better relationship with that and more self-awareness around that, we also can begin to cultivate our desire for connection, care, curiosity about what's happening with the other person. Because we want to both be able to be in a good, healthy relationship for ourselves and be attentive to what we need to be able to show up as the best version of ourselves. But if we're solely focused on that, then we will miss really important, profound opportunities for connection and also to be challenged by the people that push our buttons.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point to make, because it's easy to get in that loop of heal myself and the next retreat, but the huge lessons are in the suffering, and especially the ones that are, gifted to us in our lives that push our buttons and really mirror some deep-seated things that wouldn't be awakened had they not been there.
Yes. Those challenging relationships, once we have some sense of safety or stability in our lives, we have more capacity to meet those more challenging relationships. And they are, they're a university of education. They are a real opportunity for us to notice the places where we might be projecting onto someone else, the places where we might be stuck in a limited perspective that's keeping us from being able to have more meaningful connection to other people, the places where we are falling into old patterns and crossing over our own boundaries and starting to over caretake for somebody else. Those challenging relationships are worth their weight in gold. And if we can start to learn, instead of always avoiding and just surrounding ourselves with people that, bring us a sense of well-being, we of course need that safe container and that sense of foundation of well-being to start out with. But as we begin to develop more of that for ourselves and with each other at large. Really getting curious about having conversations with people who have very different perspectives from you. And
Yeah.
can you really allow yourself to lean in and get curious about, I wonder why they see it that way? And can you tell me more about how you came to this perspective? And that genuine seed of curiosity begins to bring us closer and closer to living in a state of harmony and making a conscious choice to put connection at the center.
But that, when you're talking about the challenging relationships, that mirrors nature and the natural world also. It's, again, I keep saying harmony in nature isn't the peaceable kingdom. It's, it's chaos. There's something dying and something living and something being born. That's the harmony. And I believe in these challenging relationships, if you have your boundaries and you understand how to exercise your boundaries, when you have that natural push and pull, I don't need people just to surround me and say, "Great job, Robin, keep doing what you're doing." That's not what I'm here for. What I'm here on this planet to do is to awaken to who I am in truth. And I can't do that by myself. I can't do that out in the woods with a bag of rice and jet boil. I need to be mirrored and in challenging ways. But that's a warrior's path, though, because it is very challenging.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. I think all life forms on this planet, when they're in relationship, like in good connection and relationship with one another, we grow and evolve each other. Life is having an experience through all of these beautiful expressions. One is a flower, the next one is the bird, the next one is me, the next one is you, and we're evolving and growing what it means to be alive, what it is to have an experience of being alive. And we can't do that in a protective vacuum. We were always meant to do that in a harmony of relationships with one another. And that doesn't mean a life experience where it's a utopia and nothing, it's filled with all kinds of intricate, beautiful, unexpected moments, and it's filled with moments of challenge and heartbreak and trauma. But we are actually capable of meeting these moments of trauma. We are highly, highly resilient by nature, just the same as the rest of the animal kingdom.
I think that's important too to say, because I personally believe this, that based on the trauma I experienced, I was broken past the point of no return. So just, limp along through life as best I can in my 20s. And as I realized, finally, I'm not broken. And I think people that have experienced significant trauma and veterans that I've worked with, it's just they think they're past the point of no return. And I think when we just realize trauma is another part of life, and if you can almost see it as another beautiful part of life, because it awakens you to a deeper level of who you are. And I love what you said, what it means to be alive. You're not going to experience what it means to be alive in a utopian society, nor would we want to.
Yeah, I think when we're not seeing and trusting and experiencing our own resilience, we can kind of go into more and more and more of a guarded and protective mode. This survival place that we're in now, where there's no sense of safety or security in our relationships with each other, and our financial structures, and our community infrastructure. And so, as we go into more and more of those guarded places, we start wishing or fantasizing or wanting a life where nothing ever goes wrong and everything is, is super perfect. And it's the richness of being, to allow yourself to fully surrender and to trust in your own organic being to meet the moment, that's that incredible feeling of aliveness. And I really do believe that at the heart of everything, that's what each of us are seeking and here to do, is to have that fullest experience of being alive.
Well, let me ask you this too, because I think the waters can get a little muddy, especially for people that are in a toxic relationship versus a challenging relationship. What, in your opinion, distinguishes between the two?
That's such a great and important question. I always try to help clients to see that the first most important step is getting in touch with the relationship you're having towards yourself. And so when we're in a slightly dysfunctional relationship with ourselves, we're for sure going to be in some pretty dysfunctional relationships with other people. Most especially our closest, family or romantic relationships or close mentors or what have you. So the first step is becoming more aware of the way that you treat yourself. Becoming more aware of what your actual coping patterns are when you get scared. Right? Because when we start to go into a fear-based survival mode, on a physiological level, there's some things that we go through that are very smart for our bodies to do to help protect and guard us against pain. But when it's long-standing and it's something it's not just like this brief moment where we're being attacked or we have a car accident, but it's a long-standing trauma dynamic in one, two, or all of our relationships. We start to develop coping behaviors to try to survive. And if you can become aware of what those coping behaviors are, then you can have that first sort of aha moment where you recognize, oh, wait, I'm not feeling completely safe to be myself in this moment. And I'm starting to see why. So now let me get curious. What do I actually need to give myself? What permission do I need to give myself? What potential boundary do I need to ask for? What might I need to voice to the other person about how I'm actually feeling in this moment? Mm-hmm. So it begins first with the relationship that we have towards ourselves and waking and sort of getting clued in to what some of our automatic coping patterns might be so that we can recognize when we're not feeling safe. Once we can make a little turn of the key in how we treat ourselves and make our sense of psychological safety our top priority, it truly is the key that unlocks the door to everything else. Because as we start treating ourselves differently, we start showing up in relationships with other people in a very different fashion. So that's the beginning of transforming a lot of traumatic or troublesome relationships into something that's more of a challenge, that's a healthy challenge.
Beautifully said. And I really like that, to distinguish that. And I think too, when your relationship with yourself improves, sometimes the toxic relationships can now transform into challenging relationships when your boundaries are being respected and they're giving you their boundaries and you're seeing each other now as authentic people. I don't know if you saw this picture, it went around the internet, but it was a sculpture from Burning Man, I think this last year, but it was these two adults, giant, and they were facing the opposite way with their hands on their knees and heads down. And then inside the two adults are these two children reaching out their hands to try and connect to each other. And I think that's, what we've gotten such into, our traumas are battling each other. Our feelings of not enough are battling each other, but what we're really craving is to be seen authentically and to connect authentically with one another. And that takes what you were saying, that deep self-awareness and understanding of who you are and your value, and why asking for your value is not something that you should be afraid of.
Yeah. And, I just want to say for anybody who listens to this at a later time, I think it's important to recognize that we need support with that process. And we don't necessarily have a culture or a lot of relationships that support us in trusting in our own needs or actually getting in touch with when the body is communicating to you about a boundary. We really do need the support of one another and good, healthy facilitators that we feel like we can trust to help us get into a better relationship within ourselves. But once you have a good foothold in that arena, the ripple effect is profound. Let's say that I've been working for myself on trying to notice when I don't feel heard by someone, and maybe I've been in a friendship for the last 10 years with a girlfriend that I meet a couple of times a month for tea or go for a walk or something. And we get into a conversation and I suddenly recognize, you know what? I'm having that same sensation where I feel invisible and I feel like something I just said was really dismissed and I'm really not feeling heard. So recognizing that's happening is like golden. And when I recognize that, to be able to come to that friendship and say, Sally, I'm really sorry to interrupt your conversation right now, but there's something important I need to express. I'm feeling really disconnected from you in this moment. And I'm noticing that I'm feeling really disconnected from you in this moment because I just shared something a second ago and I felt like it wasn't very well received or like you didn't hear me. And so I want to just take a second to actually talk about that. And if my friend, continues to just sort of blow me off and be like, haha, no big deal, don't worry about it, or, let me just carry on with my story, I'm going to begin to notice, this is a relationship where someone can't reciprocate in caring about my needs as I care for their needs. And so maybe I have the emotional bandwidth to be compassionate around that. Maybe I understand what her childhood upbringing was, and I understand that it's coming from a place of trauma. Maybe I have all this wonderful awareness around it, but I care enough about my own need and desire for connection and friendship to be able to say, I've done my best to try to communicate to you and find a healthy place of connection. It doesn't feel like that's happening right now. And so I'm going to step away from this relationship.
Well, I love this because it's not making the other person wrong. It's not challenging their ego. It's owning who you are and what's important to you and expressing, I would really like to be in friendships where I'm seen and heard. That doesn't mean that that's everyone's goal either. And it doesn't make it wrong to be in relationships where it's you guys just hike together and don't say a word.
So nature is one of the best places for us to get that kind of emotional, physical, and energetic reset. And as we are relearning how to craft this kind of life for ourselves, nature is and always has been holding a roadmap for us about how to kind of drop into that state of self-awareness and self-acceptance and to surrender to the unknown and to trust in our own resilience. So it's a good place to start. As you do that, when you come into places, maybe you're walking on a hike, or you're looking at the ocean, or you're looking at a flower, or you're petting your dog, or you're talking to the birds that are sitting in the tree, to notice the physical sensation you feel in your body. Notice what your breath is like. Notice what happens to your jaw, to your shoulders, to your eyes, to your knees, to your feet, to your hips. Being really attentive to sort of becoming aware, oh, this is what my body feels like when I feel a sense of safety, when I feel a sense of belonging.
Mm.
Then we want to bring that into our human relationships, right? If we're going to start to repair what we've been born into, then we have to start bridging it over. And that means paying attention to, when are there moments in my interactions with other people where I feel similarly? I notice my throat's relaxed, or my shoulders are relaxed, or my eyes feel soft in the same way that they do when I'm petting my dog. Whatever those physical sensations might be, those are those indicators that how I'm showing up and the way that this person and I are interacting is cultivating more of that sense of safety and well-being for me. So we start to learn to track it consciously, then we can begin, to communicate about it with each other and start to find more and more and more of those points of connection.
I love that. And that just made me think too, when distinguishing between a toxic relationship versus a challenging relationship, the nervous system isn't chronically being activated, or your adrenals aren't constantly being stressed, and it's not that chaos, but it's challenging, and it is really making you look inward about not where they're showing up poorly, where you are, where you're functioning and you're being puppeteered by your past trauma or your past limiting beliefs or whatever it is. But then getting that place where it's still the nervous system is not being taxed. And connecting again, we forget we are Mother Nature. We are nature. We are part of this kingdom. Once we lose the illusion that we're separate, and we can really tap into relationships that mirror Mother Nature, I think is what we're talking about. And in that, I really want to ask you about your self-care routine and how you're getting through this global pandemic right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm certainly human like everybody else, and riding all the waves of what comes up for us when we're facing so much uncertainty. And so very intentionally, as a result of wanting to meet that moment with consciousness and not slip too far into places of overwhelm, I spend a couple of hours every morning doing different sort of rotations of breath work. And then I spend about an hour each morning doing Qigong. So it just has been one of those practices that, for whatever reason, for me, it works really well. That gentle, slow, energetic movement and deep breathing really just kind of helps drop my entire physiology into a parasympathetic, nervous function, and that, in order to meet each day and embrace all the uncertainty, that's a really important place, a starting point to start from. So it's been there are some days where I've get up and get distracted and miss that morning routine, and man, oh man, can I really tell a difference throughout the day when I skip it. So I'm strongly motivated to keep that going. And the breath work is also like the Qigong. It's very intentional and very conscious to help have the body consciously move into places where it's slightly stressed, and then going into that relaxed parasympathetic nervous function again, and working with the body's ability to meet those moments and kind of pendulate between the two, which is a way of, continuing to foster and cultivate that resilience.
And that's, again, it circles back to what you were saying about when you're tapping into who I am, my body will tell me what my routine is. Like for me right now, it's taking my yoga mat, putting it almost in the water, and doing yoga, what I call feel-good yoga. I just go through a routine that feels good, and then I do Wim Hof breathing. That's been really helpful right now, just to do longer and longer breath holds, which I never thought I could be able to do. But it calms the nervous system and prepares me for the day. And like you were saying, when I don't do it, I notice it. I am not the same person. And it just, it relieves that. But thank you so much, Koelle, for doing this podcast with me, and for you just have always been that very clear light in navigating the spiritual path that we're on, and stating it in a way that I think we can all understand and resonate with, and not making us feel like this is overwhelming and I'm broken, or we're all in this together.
We are, and while it's a very challenging time, it's also a very exciting time.
I agree.
A lot of the sort of the structures that we had so rigidly in place that were keeping us sort of stuck in the same pattern. And we have a profound opportunity right now to stay curious, to slow down, and to start to cultivate something different for ourselves, but doing that in connection and in community with one another.
I love that. Yeah. And I think, final parting words, if you take nothing else, it's stay curious. Stay curious during all of this.
I feel so honored to be alive on this planet at this point in time, and being a part of a time when we're all really awakening together.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful process, even though it has really difficult moments. And I just feel a deep sense of gratitude to be able to share about it, to talk about it, to learn, to evolve, and to grow each other together. It's a really exciting time to be alive.
You're absolutely right. And again, it's mirroring nature. We're on the cusp of a global restructuring and a global awakening. And it's not going to be just love and light. It's all of it. And the shadow is equally beautiful as the light, in my humble opinion. Have that kind of the step back awareness to be curious about, why did I just get really triggered in that moment? Not making yourself wrong, not stepping into shame, but just staying light and curious, and seeing where it takes you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Koelle.